Hello again YouTube, welcome back to another video, and today I'm doing a VR, not a virtual reality. I'm not going to just suddenly appear in your living room, but this is a video response. I've done one of these before, but this one seemed like quite an interesting subject, and I've seen a few of the fellow YouTubers do responses on this one, and it started off with Retro Red Steve. I'll put links down below to all these guys' videos, or to their channels at least. Yeah, Retro Red Steve did one. I think he was doing it in reply to somebody else. I don't know the other person. And then James Retro Import Gamer did a follow-up on it. And Dave Retro Games Played Badly also did a response on it. So yeah, I thought it seemed quite good, so I thought I'd jump in and do my take. So the question was your favourite games on each of the systems that you own. So I think it has to be games that you own on those systems as well. And I've got quite a few systems, and I've got probably all of my favourite games. I think I own them as well. So yeah. So let's all start. I'm going to put it in kind of an order of age of systems to give it some sort of routine to it. So I'll start off on a TI-99 because that was our first family computer back in the early 80s. And this was probably the most difficult one to pick a favourite with because it didn't have a massive library of games on that system. We probably had the vast majority of the games actually, or the ones that were available in this country. But most of them were great. They were really, really good. It was a small library of games, but fantastic versions of those games, and some nice original ones too. So I could have easily picked something like Bigfoot, which I discussed. I don't know if you can see it up on a shelf there, which I picked up fairly recently, or Defender, which I was also nuts on for years. There were loads of really good ones, to be honest. Even things like Munchman, loved them. But the one I've gone with is probably most TI-99 owners would probably pick this, and that is Parsec. Absolutely fantastic shooter this. It's a horizontal space shooter and scrolling shooter, but for the early 80s, absolutely incredible game. Still is, actually. You've got mini bosses, you've got, sort of different attack waves, different types of ships between waves. You've got the asteroid belt at the end of each level, and then it sort of goes on, and you even get some new enemies introduced quite a bit into the game. So yes, it's really varied, fun to play. Yeah, even now it is just really groundbreaking game. So for the TI-99, that's obviously the real standout title, and it's the fair pick to my favourite game on the system. Back in the day, actually, to be honest, back in the 80s, it probably wasn't my absolute favourite. It was my dad's. It was the only game that my dad would play on there. But yeah, with the benefit of time and sort of playing it more recently, it's still really incredible. So yeah, that's my pick on there, which brings me on to the Philips Video Pack, or the Odyssey. Was it the Magnavox Odyssey to people in America? And James Retro Import Gamer included this in his, and he mentioned one which would be quite easy for me to put at the top as well, and that is Crazy Chase, which I did a video of just recently. That really is a fantastic game. But my first choice, I'm actually going for something different than that. And James, I don't know if you've got this one already. If you haven't, you definitely need to get it. And that is a game called Killer Bees. This is an absolutely amazing game, completely original, not similar to anything else I've ever played. Yeah, I might do a video of it at some point. Cy Ginger Hippie Gaming, he recommended this game to me, and I've got to admit, it's an absolutely incredible game. Fairly simplistic. It's just a single screen sort of arcade type game, but there is quite a lot to it, and there are strategies in that involved, but it's just really fun to play. You can play and play and play that game, which I have been doing lately, and it's just really good fun. So yeah, that's my pick for the video pack. I'll try and sort of stand them up there if I can. Next, I'll move on to, I'll do the Atari 800 next. You might have already seen a little flash of it as I bring it past. This is quite an easy pick because this game had to be in my list somewhere because it's one of my all-time favourite arcade games, which is probably already a giveaway. And of course, it's the Williams arcade classic Defender. Always was nuts on the TI-99 version. I always thought that was an absolute cracking version, which it is. But when I play it now, I do kind of see its flaws, which I never did when I was young, in that it's a bit sort of jerky. Hasn't got the nice sort of inertia when you turn around and that type of thing. The sounds on the TI-99 version are probably more arcade accurate than this one, but this plays really well. It's a great port of Defender. So yeah, Defender had to be in there somewhere. So I'm using that for the Atari 800, and probably the best home version. Alongside, probably alongside, what do we call it on BBC Micro? Planetoid. Planetoid is almost on par with this, but different, because Planetoid plays more like the arcade, where you've got your sort of up-down thrust and reverse direction, that type of thing, whereas that's more of just a joystick controls there. So anyway, there we go. Atari 800, I've got Defender. Oh, speaking of which, hang on. See, I knew I'd forget one. I'd already planned this beforehand, sort of thinking about what games I was going to include earlier on, but I forgot to pick one up. And for the BBC Micro, because I was just talking about it, again, really tough choice. There's loads of great games on a BBC Micro, so it was quite tough to pick an overall favourite. Almost went with Crazy Rider, because although I'm a latecomer to that game, absolutely love it. It's just so playable. I have done a video of Crazy Rider already. But the one I'm picking for the BBC Micro is Exile. Absolutely groundbreaking game, incredible game. Superior Software, of course. A lot of people will know this for the Commodore 64. Got a port of this game, but this was the original, on the BBC Micro. Absolutely incredible game. It's kind of a, what would you call it? Space adventure, I suppose. Space exploration. Bit of a shooter, bit of a puzzler. It's just got everything, really. Impeccable game. And it still holds up, still plays amazing. The physics engine in this, well, I don't know if you'd call it a physics engine back in those days, but the physics, just perfect. It just plays so nice, and it's still, even when you play it today, it's still an incredible game. So there we go. So we've got Exile for the BBC Micro. And next I'm going to do the ZX Spectrum. Now the games that I've on the other systems so far have been quite sort of tricky to decide which one to put. This one was a no-brainer, because on a ZX Spectrum, if it hadn't been for this game, it would be really hard to choose, because of all the systems, of all the computer systems and consoles, Spectrum had the best library by far for me. There were just so many games. I could watch 100 VRs to this, and people could put a different Spectrum game each time, and I'm sure with each of them I'd probably think, yeah, that's a fair choice, because there were just so many brilliant games on there. But one stands right at the very pinnacle, and that is, of course, Chaos. You've probably seen me talk about this before. The Julian Gollop masterpiece. My introduction to turn-based tactics games, which I was then nuts on for years, really hooked me in. And yeah, single-screen tactics game. Could have 1 to 8 players, or just 1 player and 7 computer-controlled players if you want. But yeah, myself and my best mate, we played the hell out of this. We must have put hundreds of hours into this game, and I still enjoy it now. My best mate's no longer around, sadly, but still enjoy playing this. And either against a computer, now and again I'll even just put 8 computer players on there and just watch them battle it out with a cup of tea. It's just that good. So yes, Chaos is actually my favourite game of all time on any system. So of course on the Spectrum it was always going to be Chaos. So there we go. So I'll put that nicely at the front, rightly so. So from there, I will go to the Amiga, Commodore Amiga. Again, there's a lot of games I could have had a hard time choosing with this. Megalomania would have been a good one for me, because I was nuts on that. Completed that loads of times. But the game I'm picking for the Amiga, this is a multi-pack game that I've got. This is a compilation. My original one that I used throwing back in the day. Thankfully, I kept quite a few of my Amiga games. But out of these 4, this is the one, Cannon Fodder. Incredible game. I think everybody loves Cannon Fodder. I haven't ever heard anybody say, oh, that's a crap game, or wasn't my cup of tea. It had everything. It had great controls, original gameplay, great music, great humour. Just the level design, everything about it was just perfect. Really, really addictive. But in all honesty, all those games were great, weren't they? That Chaos Engine, Terminator 2, Settlers. Cracking box set that was. So yeah, there we go. So Cannon Fodder is my choice for the Amiga. So that then brings me on to the Super Nintendo. And this really would have been between 2 games. Again, loads, really great library on the Super Nintendo. But the choice for me would have been between Super Mario Kart and Super Mario World. And I'm going with Super Mario World. Again, an absolute classic. Don't think anyone would dispute that. But yeah, that's my favourite favourite 2D platformer of all time by far. I played this before. I didn't have a NES, I only had a SNES. So I played this before I played Mario, Mario Bros 2 and Mario Brothers 3. But then after this, I picked up Mario All-Stars on the SNES. So I went back and played those games. But probably because I'd been spoilt with this, and obviously they were a bit older in design. I didn't like on Mario 1 and 2 that you couldn't walk backwards on the screen when you'd already moved forwards. You could on Mario 3, so that was quite a good one. But none of them were quite Super Mario World for me. And that's never been bettered. Absolutely beautiful, stunning game. Perfect gameplay. Loads to discover. So has to be Super Mario World on a SNES. So that's that one. Right, now there's a little bit of a pattern following on from Chaos, really. That was the start of something. So I'm moving on to the PlayStation. Again, loads of good PlayStation games, loads of great PlayStation games. But probably, I think if I'm picking my absolute favourite, it would be between two games, both of the same game. One's a sequel. And because I don't own the first one, that narrows it down for me. But I think even if I owned both, I would still choose this one. And that game is Vandal Hearts 2. The first one was incredible. Again, turn-based tactics. I got the bug with Julian Gollop playing, obviously, Chaos and Rebel Star and Laser Squad. And then on the PlayStation also, XCOM. Played XCOM, loved that as well. But I did like the slightly less complicated, more forgiving pace of Vandal Hearts. And Vandal Hearts 2 especially, I don't know if that's going to focus in. Vandal Hearts 2 had that mechanic where you could move at the same time as your opponent. So both you and your computer would choose their sort of moves at the same time. And it just really opened up loads of different strategies and just made it feel really really unique and a nice spin on the sort of turn-based tactics genre, which by that time I'd already played quite a lot of, but really, really enjoyed Vandal Hearts 2. So yeah, that is my pick for the PlayStation. Then I'm going to the Nintendo GameCube. And I said there's a bit of a pattern here because this one, similar sort of ilk really. But again, amazing game, brilliant level design, brilliant characters. You could replay this easily because there's various little things you can do in the games. You can trigger conversations with characters and persuade them to join your side. It's got permadeath on it, so if you lose a character, then the next time you play, if you can keep them alive, things can change quite a lot on this game. And that is Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Perfect game, absolutely amazing. And it says something, it's kind of testament to this game that it's one of only two of my original GameCube games that I kept. When I sold all my GameCube stuff, got rid of all the games, but I kept this and Resident Evil 4 just because I couldn't bring myself to sell them. I loved them so much. Resi 4, again, amazing game. I've probably replayed Resi 4 more than any other game, but as the real standout game, it has to be this. That was my first introduction to Fire Emblem as well. I hadn't played a Fire Emblem until this one. But yeah, perfection. Brilliant game. I'm glad I did keep it because these are really expensive now. I think you're looking at a couple £100 plus for this game, which I wouldn't want to spend. I wouldn't spend that on a game, but I'm really glad that I kept my original one. And although I'd like to have the money from selling it, I don't think I could bring myself to let it go. So that will probably forever stay in my collection, that one. And then from GameCube, I'm moving on to Nintendo Wii. And again, similarly, got rid of most of my Nintendo Wii games many years ago. But the one I kept is Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, which was the follow-on from Path of Radiance. Not quite as good as Path of Radiance, but not far off. Another fantastic game. And if you had your game save from Path of Radiance on a GameCube, you could put the memory card into the Wii and actually load your characters in. Not through the entire campaign. This was kind of split into two sections, this game. But yeah, you could carry your characters across, which was really nice. I don't think it really changed the gameplay up that much by doing it, but it was just really cool to carry your characters over. It felt really good. So yeah, there we go. And again, this one not as expensive as the GameCube version, but again, it's a very expensive game, so I'm really happy I kept it. Not the reason I kept it, I had no idea it was going to go up in value, but just like the previous Fire Emblem, I could never bring myself to get rid of it just because I loved it, and I always felt like I'll replay it again, which I probably will soon. So yeah, there we go. So that's that one. I don't still have a GameCube, by the way, but I do obviously still have my original Nintendo Wii, so I can play GameCube games on there, so that's why I've still got that one, or one of the reasons. That's why I'm putting it on the list. Yeah, so from there, I hope I haven't forgotten any systems, but from there I'm jumping straight onto the Spectrum Next. And on there, this is the first game I bought for the Spectrum Next. Pretty certain it was. It's still the pinnacle of Spectrum Next games for me. It's just absolutely flawless. There's been some really good Spectrum Next games, but none have bettered this, in my opinion, and that is Delta Shadow. Absolute stunner of a game. Beautiful graphics, excellent gameplay. Feels like a proper game that, you know, if you went out and bought like a top tier SNES game back in a day, or a top tier Sega game back in a day, this has all the polish of a full retail game, which some of them you can kind of tell it's like a how do you call it, like hobbyist developers and everything, but this really had so much polish. I don't know if you can see that as even racing sections. This, I never played the original that it was inspired by. It was inspired by a game, I'll probably get the wrong name here, but I think it was Power Blade 2 or something like that on a NES. But because I didn't have a NES, I never played that one. So yeah, there we go, Delta Shadow on the Spectrum Next. And that finishes off all of the systems I've got. I can't quite display that one, can I? Will it stand up there? Until I finish the video? It might all collapse. But yeah, there we go. So that's my video on that one. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my little take on it. Yeah, if you've got your own response to do for the subject, it'd be brilliant. I'd like to see more people do video response to that, because I do think it's yeah, it's a nice little subject rather than just talking about one system, to talk about everything that you've got in your, all the systems you've got, and your favourite games on each one, or favourite game. Only one. You can't go sneaking 2 or 3 in. So yeah, I'll finish up there. The Revival, already mentioned on my last pickups video, got Revival coming up this weekend. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all the people there. That anyone that knows me or recognises me, it'd be really cool to say hello to everybody. But yeah, I'll finish off for now. So that's it from me. I'll put links to the other guys' channels down below, the other guys that did their VRs to this. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you another time, and that is all.